You so much for joining. My name is Katie Widrick. I'm the community manager of the Predictable Success Leadership Center. And whether you are joining me live on this training or catching the replay, I want to thank you so much for spending just a few minutes with me and exploring the topic of leadership in a few deep dive moments together. And I want to set a few expectations right off the bat. In today's training, I'm going to be sharing some insights, some resources, some prompts, and even some provocative statements that are designed to help all of us, you, me, the members of the Predictable Success Leadership Center community, everybody who is pursuing personal and professional development. All of these prompts are designed to help us take that deep dive into the word leadership, where it shows up, what actually is it. And I want to encourage you to think of this as an interactive opportunity. If you are watching live or the replay, I would love to have you comment and share with me what your takeaways are, maybe even share some ideas or some prompts for me, because as the community manager, one of the best things about my job is I am constantly learning and growing from people like you. But in the spirit of pushing each other and really encouraging each other to pursue these big goals, we're going to be looking at a few things. Number one, we're going to be talking about the updated definitions and understandings of leadership in the modern marketplace. And I think that's really important. We'll be looking at what leadership has traditionally meant, how it has been interpreted, and how we can all kind of grow and raise the narrative as we explore leadership in today's world. We'll be talking about examples of leadership in action, and spoiler alert, there will be a little bit of homework that I will encourage you to do after this training so that you can really soak in what we've talked about and explore this topic in your own life and in your own circles. Inside of the community, we are doing quite a bit of work on setting weekly, monthly, quarterly, and annual goals, again, for professional and personal development. We'll touch on that a little bit in today's training, but if that is something that you're looking for accountability and cheerleading and support for, plug alert here. I would love for you to join me and the other thousands of members in the free community that we have built inside of the Predictable Success Leadership Center. I'll be sharing all sorts of ways that you can get involved with us throughout this training and, of course, after. And I'll also be sharing some activities that I encourage you to do or to stop doing, again, as you pursue growth and your leadership development. So we're going to pack a lot into a very short training. And at the end of this, my goal is that you are thinking about leadership in a new way, that you are applying some new ideas to your own pursuit of leadership, and that you're a little bit more reflective of the circle that you have around you. You know, you are able to control your own actions. And as they say, we really can't control the actions of those around us. But it is my firm belief, especially seeing it in action from members of the Predictable Success Leadership Center community, it is my firm belief that if each of us is pursuing these goals and we are pursuing leadership growth, everyone around us will be encouraged to do the same thing. We can also then identify opportunities for us not only to lean into our skills, but also to address and learn from some of the challenges or even weaknesses that our own individual leadership styles have. So let's get into it. And the big question is, what is leadership and where does it show up? And a lot of what I'll be sharing today comes directly from Les McKeown, who is the founder of Predictable Success, the creator of the Predictable Success Leadership Center, and the author of Do Lead, which is a book I'll be sharing some excerpts from and some learnings from here in this training. And I'm also going to be sharing with you how you can get a copy of Do Lead for free. This is a special gift and an offer that we are extending to you because we are so passionate about educating and empowering leaders across industries, across organizations, throughout the for-profit and nonprofit world. And so I hope that you'll stick around and learn more about that. But the central question of what is leadership and where does it show up? One of the things that Les stresses in the book and that we explore at length in our community is that for hundreds of years, it does feel, and I think you'll agree with this, if not, please let me know in the comments, it does feel like we've been quite preoccupied with the idea of heroic leadership. These are the big, big headlines. This is the audacious, oh, this is so extraordinary. This is heroic leadership. And that is fine. I mean, who doesn't love an inspirational headline? Who doesn't love seeing someone exceed expectations and lead or do something in a way that inspires all of us to believe that we can also become heroes, right? There's no problem with chasing, kind of being better than ourselves and better than the expectations that we feel have been put upon us. But I will also say, and I know that Les has expressed this in all of his teachings, including Do Lead, that we've become accustomed to leadership being defined as heroic, that is the only way to truly be a successful leader. I think some of that certainly comes from journalists and from the media. And also, I would posit that it comes from us retelling those stories that perhaps we first heard about from journalists or from the media, or reading in headlines, or seeing whether it's a news article or a news story on television, or even today, kind of clickbaity headlines on social media. We have then recirculated that. We have told those tales. And so it becomes a little bit of a vicious cycle of information and echo chambers. And again, I think that most of this is in the spirit of leadership. We are proud to see other humans doing good, even when maybe it was hard, even maybe when there was personal sacrifice or risk. We love to see that. But unfortunately, the downside to that is many of us then have this standard to which we may never actually meet. If we define leadership as heroic and only heroic, then we miss opportunities to both act with leadership intentions and skills and leadership service in our day-to-day, and to catch ourselves and to catch others in those smaller, less obvious, and certainly less heroic acts of leadership that on a day-to-day level are actually significantly more impactful, both in small teams and large organizations, or even for solopreneurs. And so leadership is, at its core, quite unglorious and headline free and even mundane. These are, again, activities that take place every minute of every day in seemingly uncountable ways. So how can both of those things be true? How can we both love and celebrate true heroic leadership and also honor and respect and value those smaller acts that will never make the headlines, that feel as though they are, again, mundane, but are so critically important? And so one of the challenges that I'll extend to you today as you watch this training is you have the opportunity to start looking around, start actively pursuing, catching people in the act of leadership as it happens around you, as it happens around each of us every single day in real life. And truly, when we do that, things can start to change. So I mentioned that Les McKeown, the founder of Predictable Success, has a book called Do Lead. It is dog-eared. It is well-loved in my house. I go back to it quite often because if you flip to just about any page, there will be some paragraph, some resource, some pep talk that you can apply to your own life. And again, I want to encourage you to really soak this in wherever you are in your journey. If you are established as a senior executive on a team that is growing and that is successful and that is in predictable success, this is wonderful. You can now apply this to your leadership as you develop members of your team and people that report to you, or even people outside of your organization that you can have a positive impact. On the flip side, if you are a solopreneur and you are just starting a company, if you are a junior member of a team, if you are in a role right now that doesn't feel like a perfect fit for your leadership style, but is where you are right now, again, take the book out, flip to any page. I can guarantee you there will be something on that page that will teach you and inspire you. And as an example, I'll take you to this quote from Do Lead. When we consider the idea of leadership, we see it as an elite act, set apart from everyday life and undertaken by people who are somehow special, heroic. But this doesn't need to be so. Okay? This doesn't need to be so. And so what's the next line? We can all, any of us, lead at any time. And I love this part so much. Les goes on to say, and in fact, more of us should. I think a central takeaway that I feel when I read this paragraph is to not wait for permission. Certainly, there are times when you are working inside of an organization or directly reporting to someone else when you may not, again, let's use the word control, you may not control the outcome, but you can certainly start to act with those small acts of leadership each and every day where you are, and you should. But those are great statements, right? I love a quote. I love something that you can share on social media. I love something that gets you fired up. But then what? Let's dive even deeper into the definition of leadership and explore where it can show up. And I do hope that as you're looking at this list and as we explore some of these items, you're really thinking about, okay, I understand what Les McKeown means. I understand what Katie's saying. Here's how I can apply this today in a small way. Here's one act of leadership that does not have to be heroic, that can be mundane, that can be a little bit, less clickbaity, but I can do it and I can show up for myself and I can show up for those around me and I can have a positive impact. These small steps of leadership absolutely can lead to big, big changes. So a few bullets here about leadership and how and where it can show up. Leadership shows up in groups or teams. Okay. Those groups or teams can be very small. That's great, right? If you are a 3-man band or a 3-person band, or it's you and 2 others running the company, or your team is a small, scrappy, mighty team inside a larger organization, you and those others have the opportunity to show up and to lead. And it can happen in an instant. Again, if we are going to dismantle the idea that leadership has to be heroic, that it has to have a crescendo, that it has to have a big moment, and then it has to kind of come either after a long and protracted battle, and then this person rises into heroic leadership. If we're going to dismantle that, and if we're going to put that aside, leadership doesn't have to be a drawn out, planned event. Again, if you choose, let's go back to that last quote. If we all choose to lead at any time and we commit to showing up and using these principles, leadership can happen in an instant. I'd make the argument that I'm leading right here today for those of you who are watching. And whether it's 2 of you, 200, 2,000, 200,000, I am now using my platform and the opportunity and the honor that I have to amplify Les's words and to put my spin on them. I'm leading, and it's happening right now. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy, and I can show up and I can encourage you and teach you, and I can learn at the same time. And it can happen in an instant. But here's the other thing. Leadership isn't a permanent state. Now, I was sharing that with a colleague, and my colleague said, "Oh my gosh, how terrifying. You mean it can disappear at any time?" And I thought, wow, how interesting to have had that reaction. Because from my perspective, it's a net positive. Leadership isn't a permanent state, which means that each and every one of us can rise into leadership at any time, but also we have the responsibility to continue to show up. You don't earn leadership status and then never have to work for it again. It's not the way it works. And if you have ever worked for somebody who has been in, and I'll use air quotes, leadership, meaning that they have a higher title on the organization chart, that they are a senior most executive, that maybe they're even the founder. If you have ever worked for or seen a quote unquote leader like that in action, who doesn't continue to lead with integrity and to lead with values and to learn and grow and encourage, then you know that that person may be a leader on paper, but isn't necessarily a leader in practice. And if you're watching this, if you're 15 minutes into a training on leadership, I know that you want to be a leader in practice as much as you might want to be a leader on paper. And here's some other good news. Leadership happens both formally and informally. I think that is perhaps the most exciting piece of this, is that there are times when you are showing up and all eyes are on you and you're introduced as a leader. And again, if you show up and continue to act, you may stay on that platform. You may stay elevated. You may stay, on that pedestal for a long time. But I want you to really be introspective for a moment, and I want you to think about times when you felt as though you were being led well. Take yourself out of the leadership role for a moment and think about where you have seen the acts of leadership. And I have to believe, because I know my own experience, is that sometimes the most beautiful and impactful and inspirational and life and career changing moments of leadership happen in more informal circumstances and situations. So I don't want you to wait until everything is formal and fancy and you're in a special environment where you have been set up for leadership. It can happen in an instant. It can happen in a small group or a small team. You have to keep earning it, and it can be quite informal. So take the pressure off of yourself in terms of getting it right or perfect. So a little bit more real talk. I mentioned at the beginning of this training that from my perspective, from Les McEwen's perspective, from a number of members of our community's perspective, I think we all agree that the media hasn't always given a full and fair picture of what leadership is, the definitions that we just started to look at, but also how it feels. Okay, this is a little woo. Let's just take a moment to be a little bit introspective and get into our feelings and really think about leadership, where it is, how it shows up, and ultimately how we feel when we assess ourselves to be good leaders. And if you're not there and you can't put yourself into those shoes right now, you have an opportunity to think about how you have felt when you believed you were being led well. Pause and ask yourself, do you consider yourself to be a leader? If you are, do you believe yourself to be a good one? And if you are a good one, how does it feel when you see that you are impacting someone and affecting them in a positive way? How does it feel to you to be a leader who is mentoring, who is cheerleading, who is sometimes having difficult conversations, but those conversations are clarifying for the person that you're speaking to? How does that feel? If you're somebody who journals, by the way, I really enjoy writing this out into a journal, a piece of paper. I like to free write this. It means that I get it out of my head. I get to give myself a little pat on the back, and I get to celebrate my wins and be, respectful and honor the work that I've done, and also celebrate all of the leaders who have come before me and who have led by example, including, by the way, Les McEwen. If you are not in that position yet, if you're not a leader, or if you are a leader and you don't feel as though you're leading well, I want you to take just a few moments. I don't want you to dissolve into self-pity or anger or really beat up on yourself, but I want you to reflect on how it feels. Because I imagine that if you are in a space where you have the opportunity to lead but have not yet taken full advantage, I imagine that you have the dissonance in your head right now. I know that if you have made it this far into a training on leadership, you want to be better and you want to grow into your leadership. And if you are not there yet, but you are working to get better, it's helpful to reflect on how it feels, because ultimately what you're trying to do is get yourself to a place where you are proud, where you do feel good as a leader, that you do feel that your acts of service to your team, to your organization, and to yourself are meaningful. And so I know it's difficult to look at what's not going well, but getting them out of your head means that you now have an action plan to work on. So don't be afraid to get into your feelings, as the kids say, when it comes to leadership. Because here's the truth. It takes commitment, and I believe it takes courage and also good faith to do this work and to look at the role that you can play in your own future. And I've used this analogy before. I'm a mom, and when I fly with my kids now on an airplane, it hits me even harder when the staff on the airplane says in the emergency announcements, if there is an emergency and an oxygen mask comes out and you need to apply it, put the oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on anyone, including your children. That hits hard as a mother. It hits hard as a leader and as a human, but it is true. If you cannot take care of yourself, if you cannot pursue leadership in your own life, and continue to work on yourself and improve your skills and learn and grow, then it's going to be so much more difficult, if not impossible, to inspire all of those around you. Because again, if we are agreeing that leadership does not have to be heroic and it doesn't have to show up in big flashy ways, and it can happen in an instant, each and every day, all day long from any one of us, then that means that we're going to be taking some risks. Leadership isn't perfect. Leadership is sometimes messy. Leadership is sometimes hard, but you can't get there if you aren't trying, and that takes courage. So here's another sentence from Les McKeown that I'd like to encourage you to write out, to speak aloud, to print out. In fact, if you have the Do Lead study guide and workbook, then you actually will be able to have a printed copy of this and sign it in your workbook. If not, stay tuned because I'll be telling you how you can get a copy for free. But I want you to let this sink in, this statement. And again, it comes from Les McKeown, who knows more than a thing or two about leadership. I can lead, and I am ready to take action in pursuit of my goals. I am committed to stepping up, adopting a leadership mindset, developing new skills, preparing for failure, and navigating through it. I will explore my natural leadership style and gifts, and I will work to make a real difference in my sphere of influence. That's amazing. And I have read this, I have said it, I flip to this page often, and even now as I read it to you, I find myself very, very reflective of how I continue to pursue and to live up to this goal myself. So take a moment, and again, take a screenshot, get a copy of the workbook, get a copy of Do Lead, and I want you to apply this to your own work and your own life. And in that spirit, if you do not have a copy of Do Lead by Les McKeown, it is your lucky day. Les and I have put together a special gift for all of you who are listening, and it is a free copy of Do Lead, Les's book on leadership, as well as an accompanying study guide and workbook. And so this bundle is available at my.predictablesuccess.com/do-lead-book. Again, my.predictablesuccess.com/do-lead-book. You simply pay for shipping in the United States, which is $8, and you get a copy of this book for free, as well as a digital workbook that will guide you through all of the chapters of the book. We are also discussing the Do Lead book in a special initiative in the Predictable Success Leadership Center, which, by the way, is also free to join. I mentioned at the beginning, I'm the community manager for the Predictable Success Leadership Center, so I would sincerely love to have you take part in our group. If you're watching this inside of our community, thank you so much for your engagement and for your commitment to this process. I know many of you who are watching this already have Do Lead and have dog-eared their copies much as I have and are completing the workbook and are pursuing personal and professional growth right now. Thank you so much for that commitment. If you are not yet a member of our community, it is 100% free to get started. And even better, what you are able to do is uncover your specific leadership style and style mix through Predictable Success. So I've shared just a little snippet here just to give you an insight into the Predictable Success methodology and into Les McKeown's, pursuit of helping people understand their individual styles and how to lean into the gifts and the skills and really how to work on some of the challenges. So the styles, as you see here on the screen, you'll be able to take a free quiz and assessment, again, at my.predictablesuccess.com/quiz. And you'll be able to take this for free. And at the end, you'll get instant results to find out if you are a visionary, an operator, a processor, a synergist, or most likely a mix of styles. So you'll get instant results once you take that assessment. And the reason that I so strongly encourage you to do that, especially if you also take advantage of the free Do Lead book offer and the accompanying study guide, is that you will be able to take these broad topics that we are just scratching the surface on with leadership and examples of heroic leadership and everyday leadership, and apply them not just to leadership on the whole, but to your individual gifts and your unique skills and how you can apply them to grow as a leader, whether it's in a small group or a large group, each and every day. And I hope at the end of this training that you have at least had one or two nuggets or takeaways that have inspired you to keep going, because leadership requires good faith. It requires courage. It requires you to do it knowing that there might be times when you have a misstep or a mistake or when you even fail. But if I can encourage you on one point, it is that it is worth it. It is worth it for your personal development. It is worth it for your professional development, no matter what your aspirations are in your career. And it is worth it because when you show up every day, when you show up and do the hard day-to-day, mundane, often unglorious and uncelebrated tasks of leadership, you will positively impact more people than you know. And I can't wait to see you do it. It is an absolute honor and such a privilege to be able to speak with you today. I would love to see you inside of our Leadership Center, my.predictablesuccess.com. If you have any questions, please don't be afraid to leave a comment or reach out to me or any member of our team directly. We would be so, so thankful to work with you and to encourage you in your own acts of everyday leadership. Thank you again. And